Get a recording. Okay.
If one thins out olive trees, Beit Shammai says he cuts them to the roots, but Hillel says he may uproot them. But they admit that if he levels, he may only cut them to the roots. What is thinning? One or two. Leveling? Three. One next to the other. One next to one the other. When does this apply? In his, but in his neighbors, even if he levels, he may uproot. Okay. Um, if one splits wood off an olive tree, he may not cover it with earth, but he may cover it with stones or with straw. If one cuts down a sycamore tree, he may not cover it with earth, but he may cover it with stones or with straw. One may not cut down a virgin sycamore tree in the seventh year because it is regarded as work. Rabbi Yehuda says it is forbidden in the usual manner unless he raises 10 defakim and cuts down to the roots. If one clips vines or cuts reeds, Rabbi Yossi Agili says he must keep distance 1 hand breadth. Rabbi Akiva says he cuts in his usual manner with an axe and a sickle or a saw or whatever he prefers. A tree which split may be tied up in the seventh year, not so that it should be healed, but that it should not continue.
So it shouldn't split any further. Okay, so that's again that follows our general rule with tending to plants during the Shemitah. You're allowed to do what you need to in order to make sure that there's no damage done. So it's like a davar aved. You can make sure that the tree doesn't split further or that it doesn't die from not having water, but you can't do anything that will actually improve its position. Okay. Now we switch topics into the fruits of the Shemitah, which, as we have learned before, have a kedusha, and because they have the kedusha Sheviis, it's prohibited to waste them. You're not allowed to use them for any purpose other than food, and you're not allowed to eat them in a way that is wasteful. And the first possibility of doing that is eating them before they're ripe. That's considered a waste. Okay. So the question that the Mishnah asks for a start is, from what point can you eat tree fruits during the Shemitah year? A pagim. So this is talking about figs. So the early figs, when they start to yazrichu is when they start going a little bit red. Okay, then he's allowed to have a casual meal of them in the field. Okay, which basically this is sort of a typical thing for a worker to do, is take his bread in the field and have some figs with him. Never heard of such a thing, but apparently that's what they did. Okay. Bichanu, once they have started to ripen, then he's allowed to bring them into his house and eat them there. So if you recall, we said during in Chumas and Masros that the fruit, you're allowed to have a snack meal of produce in the field without taking masros. So it's a similar thing over here. Is that once it's ripe enough to have a snack meal in the field, yeah, and you're not so makpid on it being the right thing, then you're allowed to eat the Shemitah produce, but you can't start taking a bunch and taking them home when they're not that ripe. Okay, but once they have started to ripen, then you can take them home. Okay, the chain.
We don't get a shear on what a snack was. I mean, a snack could be 5 pieces, or some guy could be eating 50 pieces. That's like a meal.
Yeah, right. So basically, if you're sitting out in the field and eating, that's called a snack.
Right. Okay.
It's a picnic. And he's having bread there. Look, the Mishnah is actually talking about he's having bread.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And that is the same stage at which they are chayiv in masros. Okay, and we're going to see this consistently through the Mishnahs, that once produce is liable to maser, then it's also permitted to take it in the Sheviis year. Okay, so Mishnah Ches now switches over to grapes. Haboser, when the grapes are starting to ripen. Mishahevi mayim, once they have a little bit of water in them, if you would squeeze the grape, some liquid would come out of it, because when you start with the small grapes, there's not enough liquid to get out of them. But as soon as they've reached the stage where you could squeeze liquid out of them, then you're allowed to snack on them in the field. Hivish, once they have reached a stage of ripeness, which Kahati explains that the siman is that you can see the seeds through the fruit.
Okay.
Okay. So once they have started to ripen, kones l'sof beisor, then he is allowed to bring them indoors. V'chein kiyotze bo b'shar shnei shavua chayav b'masros. And that's for the rest of in other years of the Shemitah, that's also the stage when they become chayav in Maser. Okay. Mishnah Tes, Zaysim, olives, Mishe, Yachnisu, Revius, Lisa'ah. From the point where you would be able to get a revius of oil, that's like, remember, whenever we think of a revius, we think of a Kiddush cup. Okay. A Lisa'ah, from a Sa'ah of olives, and the Sa'ah is about 13 liters. Okay. So that's, so once, if you take 13 liters of olives and get out about 100 mils of oil, that's the point at which you're allowed to eat them. Then you're allowed to crack them open and eat them in the field. Okay. Once they reach the stage where they get to a chatzilog, that's double the quantity of oil that we had before. Then he's allowed to crush them and anoint himself in the field. Once they have reached a third of their development, or the parish acher, that it's possible to squeeze a third of the shear of what they would produce when they're ripe. Okay, and once they reach that shlish, kosesh b'sadeh v'kones l'sof beisor, then he's allowed to crush them in the field and bring it into his house. Okay. So we've seen that with figs, grapes, and olives, there's a shear at which they can be consumed casually in the field, and then a later shear at which they can be brought into the house. Okay. But all other tree fruits, they don't have any specific time when they can be eaten in the field. That's different from when they can be brought into the house. So whatever time, at whatever stage of development they would be chayav in masros, that's also the stage that you can pick them and eat them, and wherever you are, and take them home. There's no difference for other fruits. It's only for these three species that we specifically mentioned that there's a different stage for kind of snacking on them in the field. But everything else everything goes according to the stage of masros, and that's when you're allowed to consume them. Otherwise, it's considered wastage.
Okay.
Okay. Base Gimel.
Base Gimel. One may clear away the stones until Rosh Hashanah. One may clip, prune, and remove the redundants until Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yeshua says what applies to pruning and removing the redundants in the 5th year applies also in the 6th. Reb Shimon says, so long as I am permitted to tend a tree, I am permitted to remove the redundants. One may smear saplings, wrap around them, trim them, and make shelters for them, and water them until Rosh Hashanah. Reb Eliezer ben Tzadok says, even in the 7th year, one may water the branches, but not the roots. One may oil unripe figs and pierce them until Rosh Hashanah. Unripe figs of the 6th year, which have gone into the 7th year, and of the 7th year, which have gone into the 8th year, may neither be oiled nor pierced. And Rabbi Yehuda says, when the custom is to oil them, one may or not oil them, because it ranks as work. Where it is not the custom to oil them, one may oil them. Rabbi Shimon permits in concerning a tree because one may tend a tree.
Okay. Demai Zayin Vav.
If there were before him 2 baskets of tevel, and he declared the tithes of this in that, the first is tithe of this in that, and of that in this. The first is tithe, the tithes are tithes of one basket in another, and he has designated them. 100 tevel, 100 kulin, he takes 101. 100 tevel, 100 meiser, he takes 101. 100 tithe kulin, 100 meiser, he takes 110. 100 tevel, 90 meiser, and 90 tevel, and 80 meiser, he lost nothing. This is the general rule. As long as the greater part is tevel, he has lost nothing. If one had 10 rows of 10 jars of wine each, and he declared one exterior row shall be meiser, and it is not known which, he must take 2 jars diagonally. Half of an exterior row shall be meiser, and it is not known which, he must take 4 jars from 4 corners. 1 row shall be meiser, and it is not known which, he must take 1 row diagonally. Half of 1 row shall be meiser, And if it is not known which, he must take 2 rows diagonally. 1 jar shall be Meiser, and it is not known which, he must take from each jar.
Hajanalach Maseches Demai. Okay.
We're moving on to
Yeah, onto Kilaim.
Kilaim.
Okay.
Okay. Dalit base. If a Zav struck a blow on the crossbeam of a frame, on a gutter board, or on a plank, even though it is merely tied down with ropes on an oven, on the receptacle of the flour mill, on the base of a millstone, on the base of a hand-powered mill, or on the measure of an olive grinder, and Reb Yossi says additionally, a Zav who strikes the beam of the bathhouse attendant, in all of these cases the loaf that falls remains tahor. If the Zav struck a blow on the door, on a doorbolt, on a lock, on an oar, on a mill receptacle, on a weak tree, or on a weak branch that grows from a strong tree, on an Egyptian ladder that is not anchored with a nail, on a ramp, on a beam, on a door that is not secured with plaster, in all these cases the loaves that fall are tameh. If the Zav struck a blow on a carriage, a chest, or a closet, the loaves that fall are tameh. However, Reb Nechama says, and Reb Chaim and Reb Shimon rule these tahor. In the case of a Zav who is lying upon benches or upon 5 money belts, if he lied along the length, they are all tameh. However, if he lies across their width, they are all tahor. If he slept and there is a doubt that he may have turned around on them, they are all tameh. If the Zav was lying upon 6 chairs, with his 2 arms resting upon 2 of them, his 2 legs resting on 2 of them, his head upon one, and his body on one, only this one that is beneath his body is tameh. If the Zav
Right, only one beneath his body, right? Because that's carrying the majority of his weight.
If the Zav was standing on 2 chairs, Reb Shimon says if they are distant one from the other, they are tahor. Okay.
Okay, so that the distant one from another, so that he can't shift his weight easily. Because if he could shift his weight between them, then at any stage he could have had the majority of his weight on one of them, and that would have done the chair fall. Anyway, I've got a hard stop now, so I'm going to call time.
Great, Chip. I will text you the name of the place and the phone number.
Thank you very much. And tomorrow I'm also doing the early minion, so but I'll be under less time pressure.
Me too. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. See you tomorrow at this time.